Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing another seascape. We're going to be doing a really sparkly, bright, beautiful seascape. And I'm going to go ahead and start listing the colors that I'm using for this. I do have red on my palette, but I didn't really end up using it, so you'll be fine without it. And I'm just going to go ahead and start by mixing the color for the sand. And I'm taking a little bit of cad yellow, the purple and white, and I'm just gonna keep mixing that until I get a nice light sand color. Normally I do my skies first, but I was really eager to get started on the water and the sand, so I just wanted to jump right into that first. So just go ahead and start mixing that up until you get a nice color. I am using a 1-inch flat brush with water on it. I'm applying this, I'm trying to focus on having the sand that's closer to you, the very foreground sand, to be lighter in color. So I'm just taking more white and blending that in just to give me a little bit of a difference, because the darker part is going to be kind of like the sand that's still wet from the water washing up, and the light part is just going to be more of the dry sand. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing the water, and I'm going to go ahead and use ultramarine blue, light blue permanent, and a little bit of cobalt teal. And I'm still using my 1-inch flat brush. I'm going to have just a tiny bit of sky showing. This is mostly going to be water and sand, so just a little bit of the sky. I'm working on a 16 by 20 inch canvas, so as you're working this in, just try to give yourself maybe, like, I'd say the sky is about a maybe like a fifth of the canvas. So you can, if you're using a bigger canvas, just try to keep that in mind. And then you can just go ahead and blend that water right up into the sand area. And I am going to go ahead and add white on my brush because I want this part just a little bit lighter. Just to kind of give me an idea of where I'm going to be having my wave come in at. I'm going to go ahead and start mixing up a mixture for the sky, and I'm just using mostly white with some ultramarine blue and light blue permanent, but you want to focus on getting the white closer to the water. So I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of the black and the light blue permanent, and I'm just going to go ahead and make a light gray mixture to kind of map out where I'm going to have some distance waves right behind the big rolling wave. And the color that I used, I'm going to pull that down into the dark sand area as well, right where the water meets the sand. So I've switched to an angled flat brush, and I'm mixing up some white, some of the phthalo green, and a little bit of that light blue permanent. And I'm just gonna kind of like take my brush and do side sweeping strokes kind of to form the shape of a rolling wave. So I'm using more green than I am blue. And the angled flat brush really does help to give you that nice shape. I am working wet on wet, so it is a little difficult to try to bring that out. But if you want to let yours dry, you can do so and then put your rolling wave in. I felt like it needed to be a little darker, so I pulled some more of that phthalo green in, and I just made a line at the top. And since it is still wet, I'm just taking my brush and dragging it down. Start on my shadow color underneath that rolling wave, and I'm taking raw umber and some of that phthalo green, and I'm gonna just kind of take my brush and kind of go up within the shape of the wave and bring it down, doing just like side to side motions, trying to form an illusion of somewhat of a shadow area. And now I'm going to go ahead and pick up some of the light blue permanent into that phthalo green mixture just to lighten it up a little bit. And I'm going to put it kind of in between the shadow areas we had. So it's going to fade eventually into like a grayish white color as it gets closer to the dry sand. So I'm mixing up a really light gray color. So this is going to be the water washing up onto the sand, and I'm kind of just mapping out where I'm going to have everything. And you don't want to use your brightest white, and I'm using actually the transparent mixing white from here on out as my primary white because it's going to create some translucent layers, which is really going to help you out when you're doing your water. For whatever reason, it just really works for me. I love using transparent mixing white for my seascapes. It doesn't pile on the paint, and you can see all the different layers through each one, and it just creates so much more detail. And I think that it's just better to to do a lot of different layers like that with the transparent mixing white rather than just put the opaque white into it. And you can water it down if you have just regular titanium white, but if you can, I would recommend getting the transparent mixing white. You can get it as it's the Liquitex Basics brand is what I'm using, so it's not very expensive and it's good quality paint. And you just want to be careful, you want to hold back your brightest white. That's going to be saved for the very end. So whatever you do, don't put straight white on the canvas unless you're mixing it in. Like as you can see, I'm picking up a lot of white on my brush, but when I'm blending it in, my color beneath is still somewhat wet, so I'm just kind of like blending it, so it's not going to be straight white. And I'm just going to keep kind of doing this this pattern throughout. And I've got like a good amount of paint on my brush, so when I push my brush down onto the canvas where I want certain ripples to come up, it makes it thicker. And you can see those ripples kind of coming out. See how I'm doing right there? So now I'm going to go ahead and start just very lightly dabbing some white dots right here where the wet sand meets the dry sand. It's going to make it look like it's glistening, and it's really going to look pretty. You can use a small round brush and do little individual dots, but I find that like a fan brush or a rake feathered brush or something of that sort will help you get the illusion that you're going for. So I'm just using a small fan brush for this. Go ahead and blot some underneath here too, which is right where the water is washing up onto the wet sand. Grabbing a little bit of black and just kind of putting it into that blue mixture. You just want somewhat of a dark color to put underneath the wave, or not the wave, but the water washing up as a shadow. And just kind of line the area that you put the water in at. The bigger your shadow line is, the thicker the water is going to look washing up onto the shore. So keep that in mind. Now I have this feathered rake brush, and for those of you who watch most of my videos, you'll know that I use this a lot in my videos, and it's one of my favorite brushes. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of start trying to thicken up this line here where the shadow line is, because I do want some thick ocean suds washing up onto the shore. And try to keep it more on the grayer side. The gray tones in this with the turquoise and then the bright highlights that we put on is really going to give such a beautiful effect to your painting. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some more white, and I'm going to put it just right above that shadow line we just put on. I'm going to try to blend it the best I can into that shadow line. Now I've got the white on the tip of my feathered rake brush, and I'm just very, very softly putting some more little sparkles right underneath there. Switching back to my fan brush, and I'm mixing up a dark gray color. And this is going to be the shadow color for the white foam spray that's coming off of the wave. And I know it's kind of hard to see because my hand is in the way, so I apologize, but I'm just blotting it on. I'm blotting it on pretty gently, making sure not to get too much of a blob on there. You want just little dots, little foamy spray bits coming up. And make sure that you go dark enough because, again, because it's such a bright and sunny day in this painting, you want some dark shadows because those bright highlights are really going to bounce off of that. So make sure you're getting your darks dark enough. And lean more towards, again, the grayer tone. So just keep blotting that in there wherever you feel like having your foamy bits come up at. So I'm just kind of picking up more white and some of that blue mixture, and I'm just blotting that on. And I'm going kind of heavy in the areas that I really want the white and brightest highlight to be. And just kind of like twist your brush up and down, side to side, as you're applying it to create the movement of the splashing water. So I'm taking the phthalo green mixture that we had earlier, a little bit of light blue permanent, some raw umber, and I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of wiggle my brush back and forth in the shape of the wave right underneath where the eye of the wave is. And I'm gonna go ahead and start putting in some more shadows. We did this earlier, but sometimes it's just good to go back and forth. This is why I like to use the transparent mixing white in with my paint, because I really like to just layer these on and be able to see those different layers throughout the painting. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and really start to bring out these brightest foam splashes coming up. And when I'm doing this, I'm taking, like I said, a lot of paint on my brush, but I'm doing very light touches. And I'm just trying to create like these little shapes. But still trying to be cautious of not covering up all the shadow area. Now this part over here, I'm going to put a little bit of splashes up on. This isn't really necessarily the part of the wave that's rolling over, but it's kind of like the start of a wave. I'm going to go ahead and start picking up some of that dark color that we mixed earlier with the phthalo green. And I'm going to go ahead and lighten right underneath where this wave is curling over. go ahead and grab a palette knife. You want something with an edge on it where it kind of dips down. It's a complete flat palette knife. So go ahead and grab one of those. I'm just using a set from Hobby Lobby. It's very cheap. And you want to go ahead and start kind of dipping your palette knife in the white, and you want just enough on there to lightly graze the canvas with. The back portion where the sparkles are going to be pretty dense with the white color, so it's okay if you have more on your palette knife in the very back, because that's the farthest away. And then as we get closer to us, we're going to go ahead and redefine the sparkly parts, and we're going to kind of put them on individually. And you can see I'm using very light pressure, and I'm just kind of tapping and then pulling down. And you can even like rub your brush in a circular motion. I'll show you how to do that in a second. And I do that when there's not very much paint left on my palette knife, and it just kind of creates some really cool effects. So you just play around with it and see what works best for you. You can practice on, you know, something else first, but you don't want to have too much paint on your palette knife, because then you'll have just big blobs of paint everywhere. And I am going to go ahead and redefine this at the end. So what I'm doing now is only going to be just a little bit, just to kind of see like how I'm liking it. And then I'll come back through at the end and add more. Taking light blue permanent, ultramarine blue, black, and I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of that phthalo green as well. And I'm using the feathered rake brush. I wanted something with like a really thin edge, because I'm going to start working on the distant waves behind the big rolling wave that we have. So you want kind of a darker blue color. You want a couple different shades. So I'm going to kind of start doing like little triangular shapes to create some little distant waves. And as I do those, I'm kind of dragging down the top, making like little waves or little ripples within the waves itself. And you just kind of want to like act as if you're bricklaying your waves. That's kind of how waves are in real life. They kind of overlap one another. So I'm going to lighten up that blue area just a little bit and try to blend it in just a little better. Just add more white into that mixture. And you're going to go in between, kind of just slightly blend those little lines that you made. Now I'm mixing up just kind of like a really light blue-gray color to act as a highlight, and we're going to be putting those around the dark parts that we put in to kind of put little highlights on top of them. And you don't want to use a lot of paint, just very light pressure. Where you see like darker parts within the area, just go ahead and kind of outline them with the lighter color. Go in between those dark areas. ahead and grab my small round brush, and I'm grabbing that dark blue color we put in for the darker part of the waves back there. And I'm gonna start kind of redefining them and putting in smaller waves. Same technique that we did before, but just doing smaller ones between the bigger waves we did. And as you can see, I've got that lighter blue color, and I'm going in between the smaller triangular waves that we put in just a minute ago, and I'm doing the same exact thing we did before, which was outlining them with that lighter color. On this big rolling wave again, I'm gonna go ahead and bring out more of those dark shadow areas with the phthalo green, black, and the ultramarine blue. So now that I've got the darker shadow area in kind of where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and mix up a light grayish color. This is where we're really going to start bringing out the gray color in the flat part of the water coming down from the rolling wave. So I'm mixing up white, black, and a little bit of light blue permanent. So you want it to be kind of more of just a light gray blue color. And I'm taking it up in between the dark shadow areas we put in, but not so much, just so it kind of blends in a little bit. I'm going to bring it all down through this flat part of the water. A little bit more white to that mixture. I'm going to brighten this side up a little more. Little reminder, I am using transparent mixing white. Like I said I was in the beginning. I just wanted to reiterate that I am using the transparent mixing white. Be afraid to, get in there with your brush and create little shapes. I'm just kind of taking it and curving it over right here, and it's kind of look like there's another little water ripple coming off and splitting. So, I mean, it just adds more interest to your painting. So just, don't be afraid to experiment and try different things. So I'm even going to come over here on this left side and add more of my transparent mixing white to the edge. So it looks like there's heavier foam in that area. So I'm taking the palette knife again and dipping it in the white, and I'm just going to start dabbing lightly onto the canvas. I want to kind of even this big blotch out and just kind of try to spread it out on the sides a little more. And see how I'm kind of like rubbing the palette knife into the canvas in circular motions? Just play around with it, guys. I think that you will really like using the palette knife for this. I found it to be kind of like the best way to do sparkles, distant sparkles. And you can just kind of play around with it and do all different things, but just make sure that you're kind of getting more sparse with it as you come closer. And like I said before, you can go more dense the farther it is back. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to the middle part of the sparkles, and it's good to let this area dry. The waves that we put in, you want it to be dry. Okay, so I'm using the small round brush that I have. You want something small, and I'm taking a light gray color, almost white, and I'm just kind of like taking a very dry round brush and doing little circular motions to kind of make like a little glow around where I'm going to be putting these white dots. And sometimes you don't have to have a little glow. I just kind of put on just straight white dots to act as sparkles, but you'll see the effect that it gives when you do have a little glow around them in certain areas. It just looks like the light is really shining on it and it's making it glow and sparkle. Blend out an area that you plan on putting a really bright sparkle at. Then you just, after you've blended a little circle, you go ahead and dip your brush into the straight white paint and just dab it on right in the middle of it. As you can see, I'm trying to kind of follow the shape of the wave, so I'm kind of like going at the very tips of the waves, because those are the that are going to be catching the light the most. really want to, you can go ahead and kind of take your brush with the little sparkles that are still wet and kind of drag them up. I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to see with my hand in the way, but all I'm doing is just dragging up a little bit to create some little like glimmers off of the sparkles we put on. Now I'm going to move down to the foreground of the water where the flat part is, and I'm going to put straight white in areas, certain areas of this wave, and down on the flat part even right here, which is why you wanted to kind of leave some space to put your brightest brights colors in. So you wanted it to really just be that nice gray color for that reason, so your brightest white can really bounce off of it. So the last and very final step is taking a stiff flat brush, and you want straight white paint, and you want it watered down quite a bit, and you just want to flick some white specks onto where the dry sand meets the wet sand. And I'm going to go ahead and even put some in certain areas of all the sand, just to create the illusion of maybe the sun is hitting certain areas and certain parts are sparkling, but you want that area right where the dry sand meets the wet sand to be really, really sparkly. Have any paint on my brush at this point, but just see how you're putting in these little lines can just kind of create a little bit more depth into it. Just looks like there's a little reflection coming off that wet sand right there. up and down with your brush and just drag down a little bit so it even looks like there's more reflection showing. And just kind of pull down in certain areas, and it's really going to give a lot of, like I said, a lot of interest to your painting. So that's pretty much it for this one. I hope that you guys learned a lot and enjoy doing this one, and I hope to see your paintings that you've done. So here it is, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please remember to subscribe if you guys haven't already, and also remember to hit the notification bell for my future upcoming videos.